All right, let's just jump right in. Today, we are unpacking a seriously fascinating, multi-layered text. It's one of those explainers that connects ancient philosophy to our very modern technological anxieties. We're looking at a highly complex, pretty controversial synthesis of ideas that basically attempts to explain the very fabric of our reality. It's a wild ride that goes from the literal origins of existence to how a guitar is tuned, all the way up to modern telecommunications.
And it all really boils down to this one question. Is our modern world moving toward true harmony, or is it just an artificial, sterile compromise? This question is kind of the bedrock for the author's entire worldview. They're exploring how humanity is constantly trading natural purity for, well, artificial functionality. Are we genuinely evolving, or are we literally just papering over the cracks of a deeply flawed system? The source material we're digging into today really forces us to look at the compromises we make every single day, usually without even realizing it, and asks what those compromises are actually costing us, spiritually and societally.
So to wrap our heads around this, here's our roadmap. We'll start with the dialectic of the monad, move on to monistic versus demiurgic ideologies, explore the equal temperament metaphor, rethink the mark of the beast, and finally, look at 5G and fifth-generation warfare.
Okay, Section 1, Dialectic of the Monad.
Right, so before we can even talk about society or technology, we kind of have to start at the very beginning, the absolute origin of consciousness. According to the author's synthesis, absolutely everything in existence comes from this single, undivided source called the monad. But the monad didn't just sit there doing nothing. It willingly partitioned or divided itself. And why? To generate the experience of the other. Think of it like a massive computer hard drive partitioning itself so it can run different programs at the same time. The author is arguing that all divisions in the universe are essentially just parts of this one original substance, creating subjects and objects so that we can actually have experiences and narratives.
And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the Hegelian historical dialectic, that philosophical idea that progress happens through a constant cycle of conflict and resolution. The text breaks this down into 3 steps. First up, the thesis. The monad partitions itself. Then comes the antithesis. Because you now have separate individuals with their own competing desires, conflict becomes completely endemic and natural. But here's the absolute crucial takeaway. The goal isn't to regress back to some blank slate of unity. No, the goal is the synthesis. We have to learn how to manage and resolve these conflicts, harmonizing our wills while still remaining distinct individuals.
Which brings us to Section 2, Monistic versus Demiurgic Ideologies.
So how do we actually organize ourselves now that we're all partitioned? Well, the text posits a very strict dichotomy between 2 competing systems of thought. On one side, you have the monistic ideology. This is what's called a high-tone model, meaning it resonates with elevated ethics and pure truth. It demands equal participation, perfect information without censorship, and the complete removal of arbitrary divisions. But on the flip side, we have the demiurgic ideology. And this is the system the author argues we are currently living under. It thrives on arbitrary lines in the sand, dividing people by wealth, race, nationality, the whole shebang. It completely relies on exploitation, zero-sum games, and psychological manipulation. Basically, the text views it as a low-tone, dense system that's specifically designed to benefit a powerful few at the expense of everyone else.
All right, Section 3, the equal temperament metaphor.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. The author uses a highly technical musical concept to basically mirror our societal flaws. The manifesto draws this direct parallel between Pythagoras' pure, rational, just intonation tuning and the modern equal temperament tuning. So Pythagoras figured out that beautiful natural harmony relies on simple, rational, mathematical ratios. Think like 3:2. That is pure, natural resonance. But modern Western music? It uses equal temperament, which calculates notes using the 12th root of 2. And actually, the math there is completely irrational. It creates notes that are just slightly out of tune with nature's pure ratios, but they're consistently out of tune across the entire board. And we do this so musicians can easily switch keys without having to constantly retune their instruments. So the real kicker here is that humans actively choose an artificial sterile perfection over natural harmony, just because it's easier to manage. It's a literal compromise of our higher ideals. And the text uses this as a profound metaphor for society as a whole. We just accept systems that are fundamentally irrational and out of tune with our highest ethical nature, which, again, the author calls a demiurgic compromise, simply because it's convenient and it functions across different situations. We are basically trading the really difficult pursuit of pure, synergistic harmony for a sterile, standardized matrix.
Moving on to Section 4, Rethinking Mark of the Beast.
So how does this mathematical compromise actually manifest in our daily spiritual lives? Well, The text takes these concepts of harmony and compromise and applies them to one of the most famous and honestly most misunderstood apocalyptic symbols out there. It strongly argues against the popular idea of some physical microchip and urges us to look a lot deeper at our own behavior. The author notes that a lot of people sit around waiting in fear of being forced to take a barcode tattoo or a physical implant, thinking that physical act alone is the ultimate spiritual failure. But this explainer suggests that completely misses the point.
According to the author, bearing the mark just means your conscious thoughts and your daily actions actively uphold a corrupt demiurgic system. The forehead, that symbolizes your conscious, deliberate, carefully thought-through decisions. And the hand, that represents your manual labor, your actions, your deeds. So, following this logic, the mark of the beast is not something done to you physically, it's something you do. If you are consciously participating in a societal system that trades in deception, exploitation, violence, and those arbitrary divisions we talked about, you're already bearing the mark. It's all about your daily habits and your ethical compromises, not a microchip in your wrist.
And finally, Section 5. 5G and fifth-generation warfare.
This brings us to the real climax of the author's synthesis, modern technology. The text maps out a highly controversial timeline, basically claiming that historical pandemics were actually covers for the biological consequences of rolling out massive new electromagnetic technologies. The author asserts that authorities anticipated huge health fallouts from the 5G rollout, kind of like they allegedly did during the end of World War I with earlier radio tech. According to the text, a declared pandemic was used to mask the physiological effects of 5G radiation. They specifically point to the PCR test as this medical myth construction tool, basically claiming it was designed to fabricate case numbers and uphold a cover story. Now keep in mind, this is the author's strict interpretation here, framing modern medical narratives as deliberately constructed myths to hide a much darker agenda. The author asserts that this 5G network is essentially the ultimate expression of the sterile demiurgic system. They see it as a weapon designed for absolute physical and psychological control. In fact, the text claims that 5G actually stands for fifth-generation warfare. It alleges that the radiation causes things like micro-blood clotting and oxygen deprivation in human tissues. But honestly, even more startling is the psychological claim. The author firmly believes 5G transmitters are literally designed to beam emotions, voices, and hallucinatory images directly into the human brain, completely bypassing the ears and the visual cortex. In this view, technology has become the ultimate tool for the demiurgic system to manage and manipulate all of us partitioned monads, forcing compliance through this totally artificial, sterile grid of control. So, as we reflect on this pretty dense explainer, we're really left to wonder if our daily actions are contributing to a beautiful cosmic harmony, or if we're merely feeding a system of artificial perfection. From the mathematical compromises in the music we stream to the ideological systems we actively participate in, the author challenges us to examine our thoughts, our words, and our deeds. Are you just acting as a passive participant in a detuned, compromised world, or are you actively seeking the higher tone resonance of true ethical synthesis? It is absolutely a profound question to leave you with today. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning the structure of your reality, and I will catch you in the next explainer.